Thanks so much.
Welcome to another edition of Legend of Two Games. I'm Isaiah Rose with Frank Tier.
What's good?
You already know. Now, the NBA season has started. We've had two games each for most teams, so it's starting to get into the flow. We're seeing some great performances from premier players, and we're seeing some great performances from rookies as well. So, just in terms of the start of the season, what performances early have stood out to you?
So Luca started with two back-to-back 40-point games, right? And the second game, I thought he was going for 60 at some point, right? I think he had 23 in the first quarter, so that looked like it was going to be like one of those Luca nights. I do like. I know we talk about stars, but I like how JJ adjusted from game one to two. Like we spoke about DeAndre Ayton in the season preview, and how him he's depending on what he gives you will kind of dictate how well the Lakers can do. In the first game, he looked a bit out of rhythm. I think that they did a really good job at integrating him into the offense in the second game. Luca for certain, right? Making him a lot better and giving him an easy dump off. So that looked really well. And Austin Reeves, I think, played well for them really well, right? Like he was on 25, probably 25, I think 5 and 11 assists. So he
Mm.
played really well. Filling in really well as the second scorer in LeBron's absence. So that went really well.
Speaking to that second game, now the first game, the Lakers played the Warriors. One thing we got to point out, obviously, with no LeBron James, uh, and he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. JJ has had to really indoctrinate his players into a style of player without LeBron. And I think adding Luca last year, there was a lot of us talk about, okay, how can these two players coexist? Now with LeBron not being there to start the season, it gives JJ a solid barometer of what this team is without LeBron. And for the second game, especially going against Minnesota, who knocked the Lakers out last year, we saw how Rudy Gobert was able to exploit them. We saw how Julius Randle was able to exploit them in terms of the interior. Also Nas Reed as well. So the interior was an issue, and to see AM play a huge role in that second game really showed adjustments. And I think to your point about Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, those players really stepped up. And it outside of the first half, it really was a smoke show after that. I
Oh,
feel like
Lakers for sure.
the Lakers really got going and really you saw glimpses of continuity that could be uh, a point of emphasis, especially if LeBron is dealing with this sciatica issue for extended periods of time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what LeBron is when he's coming back, right? He is 41. In the past, we know that the best LeBron is with the ball in his hands. Right now, it did look like he was able to adjust and kind of. I think he's been kind of falling back. His usage rate has dropped. I think since they've traded for D'Lo a few years ago. The D'Lo for Russ trade a few years ago for the multi team trade. So it'll be interesting to see how LeBron feels into that. We know that LeBron's best is best with the ball, not really the best off the ball. But I think with his IQ, he has shown the capability to be effective in other ways that folks probably didn't give him how much credit for early in the career. Remember when he went to Miami, him and D Wade had to figure out how that worked out, right? I think there's
Right.
much hoopla on what went wrong the first season. I think LeBron played bad in the finals. That's why they lost, right? But he was able to not be as ball dominant as he was the first thing in Cleveland during the Miami championship runs. So I think at an older age he understands that Luca is the engine. So let's see how he works into the role as more off ball, using his IQ and still scoring prowess as a secondary scorer and playmaker for the Lakers. We'll see how well that benefits the Lakers at this late stage of LeBron's career.
For sure, for sure. Now you brought up Luca. I want to bring up Shea. Uh, Shea Gilgis Alexander is coming off an MVP season, NBA championship, Finals MVP. Really one of the best overall seasons that we've seen from a player in recent history,
Mhm.
and he's really on a trajectory to continue a Hall of Fame caliber career. To start the season, the defending champions went into double OT with the Houston Rockets. Kevin Durant, their off-season addition, really brought in to bolster potential youth, a youthful exuberant team with some veteran leadership. Obviously, Mayu Doka is a championship caliber coach. He's really redirected that entire franchise at this moment, and to see that matchup and what could potentially be a playoff matchup at the end of the season, to have a double OT game like that, it was an amazing performance on both sides for the first game. One of the issues that I've seen from Houston is we're gonna work our way back to Oklahoma City in a second, but one of the issues that I've seen from Houston is their lack of point guard play. It's an issue that's going to affect them throughout the season. Now, throughout the game against OKC, they use a multitude of ball handlers. Obviously, Reed Shepard, a second year player, he didn't really get to play last year. He got a lot of he's been getting a lot of PT. He's showing his ability to shoot, but in terms of just getting organized and running offense in the guts of a game, Houston has struggled with that. Now they do have Sangoon, who is, in my opinion, someone that is reminiscent of Jokic. I don't want to compare them because Jokic is a totally different level of player, but just in terms of how he's used within that offense as a scorer, as a playmaker, and really a versatile big, that has definitely worked in their favor throughout the game so far. But in terms of like really executing down the stretch of a game, can they rely on that all the time? I'm not quite sure, and I think that's been an issue.
Yeah, for sure. I think they have to figure out who does their ball handling and playmaking duties, right? To be successful. That game bring up okay. See, not only was it a thriller, there's a lot of emotions running high because, as we know, Kevin Durant and Jeff Green were drafted to the then Seattle Sonics, but now Oklahoma Thunder. So I believe they stayed out during the ring ceremony, right? I'm sure that kind of took at their heartstrings. That was a special moment, probably bittersweet for them. The
Sure.
franchise that the front office's brilliance in Oklahoma starts with the drafting of Green, Durant, and Russell, right? And also Ibaka, and just building the team through the draft and nifty trades, right? Kind of what seemed to be the untraditional route during the last like 15 years of players jumping on teams or kind of like exercising their rights as players, right? I don't use the term jumping. So for sure, Oklahoma was seen as a small market team with a really savvy front office, and all of that came to fruition in the championship they won last year. So I'm sure that was a kind of bittersweet moment for Durant and Green. I'm sure happy for the young players did, but like, damn, it's supposed to be us. So emotions were riding high and it went to double overtime. So I think it gave NBA fans as awesome as an opening night and week to the season as we could ask for.
Oh, I mean, when you speak to Oklahoma City and how they built their teams through the draft, the unique part about that is that they were able to do it again. Obviously, when you have players of Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook's caliber, also a young James Harden, uh, those players have gone on to be MVP players and Hall of Famers and champions. So to see that, and then those players have to leave, resetting your franchise after great players like that leave is very, very difficult. But Sam Presti, to your point, especially with the utilization of draft picks and really restocking, making groundbreaking trades before people realized they're groundbreaking trades.
Mm-hmm.
When he traded Paul George to the Clippers,
Mm-hmm.
was able to get Shea. Nobody knew Shea would become what he became,
Yeah.
but they recognized that he was a player that you can build around, a stepping stone to really go out and get and prepare for a Jalen Williams, Chet, a Chet Holmgren. Those players really morph into another version of Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. Now,
Sure.
um, to see what they did over a, a relatively short period of time,
It reached so fast for sure.
right, 3 or 4 years, and then now you have your championship. Your core is still very young. The one thing I will say is Presti learned from his mistakes with Harden and said, you know what,
We got paid him.
we'll deal with luxury tax later. We're gonna pay these guys, and hopefully we can win within a short window so that when it's time to free up money, those guys will be secure and be able to try to sustain this. So I think he did learn from that mistake, and he reaped the benefits with the championship.
For sure. I don't want to switch gears too much because I know we got like a lot like to get to a lot of focus. But when we speak about like players and where they end up all time and their legacies, not too much gets spoken about the competence of the front office, right?
Right, right, right.
Tim Duncan is awesome. The Spurs are also a marquee franchise front office, right? And the same will be said can be said for the Lakers and Jerry West, and eventually will be said for Oklahoma where Shea finishes and Presti, right? Having a once in a lifetime player, having a franchise player for a very long time, keep him happy, but also making sure that you do what you have to do to make sure that he had the pieces around him to compete for a very long time, right? So those things go hand in hand, and it seems like Oklahoma has figured it out. Like you said, they retooled in a very short time. They were in the conference finals in 2016, right? And it's 2025 and 2026 now. 2025, they win the championship, right? So yes, it's a non-time. These are very short times to go from contender to lottery to champion again is a very short window. And they did it. So hats off to the players, hats off to the front office because this is how you run a franchise.
Now, now, seamless transition there. You brought up the Spurs and their ability to be a dynasty with a franchise-defining player in Tim Duncan for 20 years, and Greg Popovich not only being a GM but also an all-time great coach. That blueprint and really building off of David Robinson as well. Can't forget him in his Hall of Fame career.
Mhm.
Even though he wasn't a champion at that time during the prime of his career, they were still a contending team. You get Tim Duncan, obviously that's going to change uh your outlook on what you could potentially be. But when you get that and you see it at a high level, you want to sustain it. And I think that for Popovich to do what he did the way that he did, it laid the track for once we lose or once Duncan retires, we have to find our way back to this level. Can we sustain it? They had Kawhi for a short period of time, and they thought that that was the future. Obviously, things change. We know what sports is about: money, ego. You never know, but they still were able to withstand that, and now they have who many believe could be transcendent piece in Wemby in his first two games in year three. He's looked amazing.
The universe works in mysterious ways, right? Because Kawhi is a star, right? A superstar for sure, right? Was able to
When he plays,
yes, he was able to win it all, right? That's the thing, right? 2018, he gets hurt. He gets traded 2019, and looking now, if they had Kawhi in the 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of situation with injury, right? They're not in position to draft a Wemby, right?
right,
A Hoffman and Castle, right? Because the Spurs would likely have always been decent, right? They wouldn't have been contenders because Kawhi would have been playing, right? But they've probably always been decent where they're fighting for a playoff spot, right? Or they get in and don't go far, but definitely don't get a lottery pick, right? So it's interesting, right? They thought they had the piece at the Duncan. This is our superstar. It didn't work out, right? But again, being able to retool and figure it out really fast on the fly is just their calling card. So they trade Kawhi, right? For DeMar. That's short lived, and now they have what many like you said, what do you believe to be that next guy, right? The next generational talent. And so far this season, he's been amazing, right? This is a off season done well. It looks like for him. I know it's early, but it does look like the improvement is obvious that he's made over the summertime. So
and the unique thing about this is that he's been dominant. Especially when you look at, I mean, one thing about the NBA when they put matchups together, especially the start of season, they want to see marquee names, right? So that first game, you see Wemby versus Anthony Davis, and we've been talking about how uh, franchises have transitioned. Right now, the Mavericks are in limbo, in my opinion. Now, we don't know what can happen. Obviously, things change really fast, but to trade Luka Doncic in the fashion that they did was very, very shocking. And I think the the move itself has reverberated it's still reverberated in a lot of ways. Dallas fans have not recovered because of not only when you trade, not only how you trade, but the the magnitude of it is heavy because of Luka Doncic still in his prime. We started the show talking about how great he's performed in the first two games because he's in that space where he just does it naturally at this juncture. He doesn't really have to work too hard in terms of having to expend that much energy. He's 26, 27, 28 years old. He's still young, right? Um, Dallas, in getting a player like Anthony Davis to complement a Kyrie Irving, the potential was there, but these are players that are both injury prone, and you don't really know what you're getting from a Dallas team that was so used to being built around a Luka in the fashion that they were. You spoke about LeBron in terms of always having the ball, everything built around him. That's what Dallas was with Luka, and to lose that the way that they did, it took them a while to adjust. So now you bring in Anthony Davis, who he needs players to feed off of, in my opinion, to be the best version of himself.
Hmm.
They go get a Cooper Flag, who still he's a great player. He's a great young player, but you don't know what he's great at just yet.
Yep.
He's still refining himself, right? And you get a matchup with a Spurs team who knows who they are. They have Wemby. They're gonna dominate with Wemby. Everything he does is built around Wemby. To see that first game in the fashion that it happened, it was very, very shocking. Not saying that Wemby couldn't be dominant, but you expected Anthony Davis to respond to that. And I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's game one, but Wimby got the better of him for sure, right? And you bring up Dallas, right? And it's interesting. Both Kyrie and Anthony Davis are for our first picks, certified great players, right? The drawback is you're not sure if you have a number one guy, right? And I
Right,
know it sounds crazy because Anthony Davis has certified number one guy numbers throughout his career, right? And Kyrie Irving has number one guy skill, shot making ability, and finishing ability, right? But both guys have exhibited that they've been their best when someone else has been better than them on their
right.
teams.
Yes, yes.
So now you take probably the two best compliments that we've seen in a very long time and put them on the same team, right? And yeah, it makes them strong, right? They appear to be formidable together, right? But I honestly don't know if either of them are a number one, right? I think they're both probably like a one B ish and a major number two. So Dallas, like you said, I believe Dallas is in limbo. As you said, Cooper Flag appears to be a great young player. We don't know, we don't quite know what he is at this point, right? And I'm gonna throw out something that happened maybe about 15 years ago or so, right? I think Michael Beasley's trajectory was altered by going to a team that should have been bad, but still had a superstar, so was expected to compete. Right? I think with great young players, growing pains are part of the process. Right? Growing pains and being able to mess up and being the guy without too much expectations is part of the process. Right? You have D Wade there. This is a team that won a championship 3 years prior to the drafting of Beasley. What do you expect, right? They're gonna compete, right? D Wade isn't gonna miss the playoffs, right? But you also aren't gonna go far, right? But now you bring in a top pick who's supposed to be learning and growing to be the complement to the team in the playoffs, right? And I just don't know if that works out for young players as it should, right? I think Kukla Flag, I think there's a potential risk of having Flag in the same position, right? Of being a young player on a team that some have lofty-ish expectations, right? So I think there's a potential risk there, right? Dallas won't be a lottery team, right? But I'm not sure if they'll be a contender, right? And you have a young guy having to fill into a role as opposed to, hey, I have the keys. I have the keys to the franchise. I'm gonna be able to thrive and also struggle, right? But grow with it, right? So I just think they're definitely in the limbo phase in a lot of different respects.
To build on that for 1 second, the one caveat that I think could help Cooper is Kyrie being out for some time with his ACL.
For sure.
This could be a space where he could develop into something more prolific to where they can understand, okay, this is what you do. So the first game he didn't score. It was a bad performance, but then the second game he scored 18. So it's almost like, okay, let's figure out what we do. Let's figure out what he does, and then I'll play off of that. Meaning Anthony Davis. That has to become a consistent thing, so that once Kyrie comes back, especially from him observing on the sideline, he can understand. Okay, what do we do? Where can I fit into to bolster this? Now, another thing, when you talk about that Beasley move, Wade was a dominant player before his injuries. So he had almost like a, not a resurgence, but he was motivated to prove he was still a dominant player. Anthony Davis at times, and I could be wrong, but it almost looks like he is resigned to the fact that he's a good player, an elite player, but sometimes he doesn't show it all the time. And I think that's always been a challenge for him. So to your point about him being around players that's better than him, being around LeBron, especially that version of LeBron 2020, it was almost like it was the perfect combination because he's an exceptionally talented player, one of the most talented players we've ever seen. But you have a standard next to you that's still in that mode, right? But then after that championship, we started to see the injuries start to pick up for LeBron, and that was when many expected AD to really take the mantle and that's just not who he is.
Never quite happened.
Right. So I think that this particular space, especially with Cooper being the number one pick, having those lofty expectations to live up to that, and especially off the heels of Luka, who Luka's been the one who takes the weight, who carries the torch as that player, is very interesting to see how they balance that out. Now, this is in the Western Conference, and it's still a lot to discuss. I mean, we got Aaron Gordon. He had a 50-point performance in a loss, by the way, to a team that many believe is the dark horse in the West.
Legit.
The Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
The Golden State Warriors have championship pedigree. They have a champion. They have a transcendent, all-worldly player in Steph Curry. They have Jimmy Butler, who, in my opinion, because he's now next to a player that's clearly better than him, he can really be exactly what he's supposed to be, which is a good to great second option.
For sure.
With good energy. And then you have youth around him with Jonathan Kuminga, Pods. Then you have the vet leadership with Draymond Green and Al Horford.
Yeah.
This can be a scary team.
For sure.
Looking at what the West is every night. We spoke about OKC. We spoke about Houston. Obviously, when we speak about Denver, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray will never have those guys out of it. They're going to be competitive. What do you think the ceiling is for the Golden State Warriors?
I think we're looking at a potential top 5 record. And I'm gonna say second round, right? A late second round, scaring the team, right? Always believe in Steph, right? He had a monster second half, spoiling a career night for Aaron Gordon, a night where he hits 10 for 11 threes.
10 out of 11.
Which just speaks to two things: his vast improvement, but also just where we're at in terms of basketball, where Aaron Gordon shoots 11 threes, right? So
yeah, for sure.
It's the duality there. So Steph had an amazing night. Steph is always going to be Steph, right? His shooting ability, and his poise will keep him at to towards the top of NBA stars, even into his older age, right? So I think Golden State can be scary, right? I'm not as high on them as some folks are, right? But I do respect that they are extremely well coached. They have championship pedigree, and they have Steph Curry, right? And like you said, Jimmy Butler, who at times looks like has had type of performances that elite number ones have in the playoffs, but we know he's not truly an elite number one, all right? He's a really good number two, right? So I think, and I honestly not sure what the Kaminga circumstance looks like, right? Situation looks like. I'm like they'll talk about the plan to like looking for a trade at some point. So I'm not sure if he's a part of their process long term throughout the season. So I think just there's some question marks for me that I had to see more before I'm as high on them as some folks are. But I do think they do have the right ingredients to make to have a strong season, especially out west, and to make a strong playoff push.
Now, because the season is so early, you have teams like the Clippers or obviously the Houston is 0-2. You have the Nuggets who are 1-1. So nobody really knows just yet who's who. But I think what we're seeing is that it like we see confidence breeds success, success breeds confidence. Once you start to win early like that, it definitely will build and stack. Now you have teams out east who are trying to do the same thing. And we've seen the Knicks. Everybody's high on the Knicks because of circumstances around them in terms of other teams. They're jumping out the gate early. They're 2-0. The Philadelphia 76ers are 2-0. There's teams like Milwaukee who has Giannis. They're going to be good. So out east, is there anything that you're seeing that you want to pay attention to, or you see a thread that might extend itself long term as the season goes on?
When we spoke on the preview, we spoke about the Knicks being the favorite, but I was like, if all goes right for Philly, right? I think we're supposed to be scared of Philly. Philly has 2 wins, right? But they're impressive because they come from behind wins, right? And impressive because the guard play has been amazing for Philly, especially like Maxey and the rookie, and Grimes other than that as well. I think what makes me dial back my expectations is seeing that Embiid appears to not be healthy, and I don't know if this is a short term thing or this is just what he may be at this point as a big at his not old age, but he's not a young player
He's
anymore, right?
he's definitely older in terms of his body.
For sure, right? So um, his
Yes.
weight, as we know, bigs have a shorter shelf life, and just the injuries, right? He's not moving well. He's not moving well. He's not rebounding the ball. He's not defending, right? He played terrible on offensive in game one. I think game two he may have 20 points, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 20.
20
But
points.
to your point though, um, the way that they're using him at this juncture of the season, he's on a minutes restriction.
Mm-hmm.
So he's only playing 20 minutes.
For
So
sure.
the first game he played in pockets, 3 to 4 minutes at a time, and then he sat him down. Whereas this game 2 against Charlotte, that the first game was against Boston in Boston, the second game was at home against Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
and the front load of the 20 minutes was in that first half. He played a 15-minute stretch, and then he sat to finish. He sat most of the game to round out that 20 minutes. So it was distributed in different ways. To your point, because of that, you don't necessarily know what the ceiling is per se. But I will say the difference between this version of Philly compared to years past is I think they've made a concerted effort to develop a team that can play when Joel is not playing. Whereas years prior, they were so invested to what Joel was at his peak that so much was built around him that when he didn't play, which is often and at the wrong times, in terms of when you're pursuing a championship, is not only when you're hurt, but not only if you get hurt, but when you get hurt. They were always left at a deficit. Whereas now they're performing much better when he's not on the floor.
Yeah. Philly does look like they've planned to be able to go with or without their franchise big man, right? And Maxey has really taking the mantle as if I gotta lead this, I'll do it, right? And he's had two really strong games, right? He started with a 40 ball right against Boston, and
Right.
VJ, man,
Amazing rookie.
yeah,
Amazing rookie.
not like and again, you can't do too much in 2 games, but if we're
Yeah.
like talk about front runners for rookie of the year, he's looking like his name will be in the bang. I think folks had good expecting him to be pretty good, right? But his way he plays off the ball, the shooting ability, the shot selection, and the
Yeah.
athleticism. Oh my God! So I think Philly's in for a treat. I am concerned what Philly does with the guards, right?
Because Jeremy Kane is still out.
And McCain. So they have Maxi, McCain, VJ, and Quentin Grimes, right? Right is a really solid player, right? Who's taken advantage of every opportunity he's had, right? He has some good moments at the Knicks, right? And he's had some really good games last season, right? And
Right.
like 40-point games. So that's cool. But also Paul George comes back, right? So I'm not sure. I do have to see how they manage these bunch of like guard wing players they have, right? How the rotation looks with that, right? Because they can be scary, but it can also be how players, especially younger players, are unhappy in potentially diminished minutes once like more premier established players come back. So I am wondered. Now Paul George is tall, so I guess they can like play with him at the 3 and 4 for sure, right? But I do want to see what the guard situation looks like with McCain, right?
So you bring that up, and we spoke about with OKC and how they had to manage that early as well. You know, nobody knows the caliber of player they draft. They just hope,
Yeah.
right? So when we think about OKC in those early years with Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, James Harden, that version of James Harden came off the bench, which is very, very effective for that Oklahoma City team because Russell Westbrook needed the ball. But because of his style of play, you needed a James Harden at times to handle the ball so Russ could get off the ball. And I think one of the things you mentioned in terms of VJ's athleticism is he's very, very active. When he doesn't get the ball, he's constantly moving. He goes for offensive rebounds. He's looking to attack gaps off of back screens and things of that nature. So he's constantly trying to find ways to impact the game even when he doesn't have the ball. The thing that is unique to me, or something that we'll have to be mindful of, is these guards are all around the same size. Jared McCain and Maxi are 6'1", 6'2" ish. VJ is about 6'4", 6'5" ish. None of those guys are really small forwards, power forwardish type of size. So you can't play them together.
Yeah.
But because of the way the game is played in terms of positionless basketball, there were stretches where McCain and Maxey played together where I thought that would be an issue, and they played really, really well together. So could it be a version of the Sixers where Embiid is the only big on the floor at his best, and you have these small guards running around and knocking down shots? We could see a version of that potentially, and it could shake up some things, but I wouldn't expect Nick Nurse to rely on that often. So one of those guys, one of those guards will have to come off the bench.
For sure.
Who would be most effective? So right now, with McCain being out with his hand injury, VJ and Maxey have been building a lot of rapport together.
Yeah, great chemistry so far.
Right. So that's gonna be something that Nick Nurse, I mean, obviously that's what they get paid to do. Nick Nurse will have to find lineups and pockets to where each of them can be effective, not only together, but some of them will have to be apart to really maximize their potential. You brought up Paul George. Paul has not been healthy as a Sixer, and considering how much they pay him, and to make that blockbuster move like that, it's been very underwhelming, his tenure as a Sixer.
For sure.
Because of that, though, I think him sitting back, obviously he's an older player. Hopefully he can sit back and say, okay, the version that they wanted me to be coming in, I'm not going to be that, but I could develop into, or not develop, but play a different version. And even if I'm not, let's say, Paul George in Indiana or Paul George in OKC, I could be stretch four. I could be uh, a player that could be a secondary ball handler at times to help Maxi. Just try to contribute in ways that could keep this team as a potential contender until Embiid is really, really healthy
Hmm.
and they could, contend for the Eastern Conference Finals. That'll be really interesting. Now, one of the teams that many people have their eyes on because of injury is Boston,
Hmm.
playing the New York Knicks and losing in the fashion that they did. And then you speak about how they lost to Philly. That Philly game was a good game at home. They had the crowd. Derek White, obviously Jaylen Brown. It was a back and forth game, you know. But the Knick game was the score didn't indicate how ugly the game was to me. I thought that the Knicks kind of took their foot off the gas at the end. They got closer, but the Knick game and Sixer game was polar opposites. Which version of Boston do you think it would be more consistent?
Yeah, that's a really good question because watching the game, Boston made a nice late push, right? Like you said, the game was more dominant start to finish, despite like the third and the fourth quarter, like foot off the gas by the Knicks, right? So I want to say Boston will be competitive, so there'll be more of the Sixer game, right? And being able to close out more of that, right? Just seeing Jalen Brown has had some really good seasons so far. And early on, although it wasn't the case necessarily, it did seem like, oh, like Jalen looks like, I mean, like offensively, he is like him and Tatum are going to protect right now. I think after a while, folks saw a clear separation, right? But I don't think that Jalen. I would never say someone's happy that someone's not there, right? Because I think in most cases, most players want to compete for championship, right? But I do think players appreciate sometimes the opportunity to showcase the best of themselves and be able to hold the fort down till our guy returns, right? But I haven't seen that in Jalen so far. It's only been 2 games, right? So let's see what type of first guy Jalen is until Tatum gets back. And I think ultimately that will dictate what Boston can be in Tatum's absence.
Now, one of the things that many people aren't speaking about is Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for Joe Mazzulla to show his bones as a coach.
Yeah.
He stepped into a team that was really ready made, and this is one of the things we've spoken about today is organizational sustainability.
Hmm.
Boston has proven to be that over the last 15 years or so. Not even 15 years if you go back to that championship in 2008.
Yeah.
Uh, since then, they've really been one of the premier organizations in terms of being a contender, having a premier product on the floor, uh, going through changeover in terms of franchise players and transitioning into future franchise players. You go from Paul Pierce, KG, Ray Allen to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and then the algorithm that they have with Al Horford and Marcus Smart, chasing the championship, finally getting one. I mean, they've been able to do it. They've also gone through multiple coaches.
Yeah.
You look at Doc Rivers, Brad Stevens, uh, Ime Udoka, and then Joe Mazzulla. Those are 4 coaches that have had each of these teams at championship pedigree.
For sure.
And but this is the first time that one of those coaches have lost. Wait, let me take that back because Brad lost Kyrie, and many people thought it was over.
They went to the conference finals though.
They went to the
Yeah.
conference finals.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of changed the trajectory of the team because they realized that they could be effective even without Kyrie.
Hmm.
So now, when you lose a premier player like Tatum, who's always been there, ups, downs, rights, lefts, whatever,
Hmm.
now he's out for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Jalen he has to prove that he's an elite player without Tatum.
Hmm.
Now, Mazzulla, who stepped into a ready-made team, Udoka had him in the finals. They lost.
Yeah.
He ended up winning, you got to show that you can be a great coach even without Tatum, which is tough because most great coaches always have a great player.
Sure.
But you got to show who you are right now to sustain while Tatum is out, and I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, that'll be a cool challenge to see. He inherited a championship team, right?
Right, right.
A team that really like collapsed against Golden State in a lot of ways, right? A
Hmm.
championship that folks believe that they should have won, right? So he inherited that, right? They win and then he loses Tatum. Folks actually had Boston winning last year as well, right?
Yes,
Before
yes,
the
yes, for sure.
Knicks upset them, right? So yeah, so this is like you said, this is a chance. This is a chance for both, for Jalen to show that he can be a number one guy, at least short term, right? In the absence of the number one guy, and a time for Mazzola to prove that, despite me inheriting the team, I'm a great coach as well, right? For me being able to weather the storm while my superstar is gone. So I think another opportunity in Boston. I do think they'll be more like they were against Philly than they were against the Knicks, and I think they'll be competitive in the Eastern Conference, right?
Yeah. So I was gonna say, do you think playing like this, the style of playing which we've seen, do you think that's enough to make sure they're a playoff team, or you think they'll be a playing?
I think it's
And
enough.
based on what you've seen the first two.
I think it's enough to make sure that they'll play your team. I think we spoke about championship pedigree and what that means. And I think Boston has that, right? And I think ultimately that'll be able to sustain them even in Tatum's absence.
Okay. So another team chasing championship, Cleveland.
Yeah,
Cleveland didn't look good against the New York Knicks, but then they beat Brooklyn.
yeah,
Uh, they're dealing with injuries as well. Many people are down on them because of how they perform in the playoffs, but they on the paper they always look really good.
yeah.
Um, Again, the East is so wide open that right now it's so early. We can see the same Cleveland team that won 60 plus last year, but they could regress to the mean. So, are there any teams? Obviously, we've really emphasized uh, Philly, Boston, the Knicks as well. But are there any rumblings of teams you think that could be, from what you see in the first two, that could really kind of shift things in the East?
Not so much what I've seen the first two, but I'm interested to see how Detroit looks
For
up
sure.
a break. Yeah.
So, Detroit obviously with the youth that they have, obviously Kay Cunningham, great player.
Hmm.
But again, expectations are going to change when you go to the playoffs and you push the Knicks the way that they did.
Hmm.
Health withstanding with them is very, very important. Right now, they're 1-1. But you want to see them get off to a good start to show that last year wasn't a fluke. So they have to they have to sustain long stretches of winning. When you lose to the Bulls to start the season, that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But they did beat Houston, so it's almost like, which version of the Pistons are we gonna see?
And I think it's really important for young emerging teams to get off to a fast start, right?
Right.
Because they haven't yet built the confidence to bring it back over the season, right? I think older teams or established teams can get up to a rocky start and be able to flip the switch, right? And okay, we know how to win some games. I think that young teams' success is predicated on confidence early on. So
Mm, for sure, for sure. Um, to quick pivot, and I think we definitely have to really address this because it's going to be an issue going forward, depending on how this shakes out. There's been a gambling scandal that has shook the NBA to its core,
yeah,
on two fronts. You have a player and you have a coach. Now it's two different types of gambling, right? Terry Rozier, who's been under investigation in years past, uh, apparently gave insider tips to gamblers and really shifted a matchup in which he on the tape it says, well, on the paper at least it's saying that he faked an injury, they took it under a lot of money, boom. Then you have Chauncey Billups, head coach in the NBA, currently he got arrested because they said that he was involved in rigging poker games for the mob,
Yeah, that's the crazy one.
right?
That's
And
the crazy one.
right, and then you had Damon Jones, who was an assistant coach years prior. He was arrested because they're saying that he gave insider tips to gamblers about a Milwaukee and Lakers game, in which he knew LeBron James would be out, and flipped the odds, and they were able to get money with that. So there's so much going on from different angles, different spaces. I believe that the NBA and most sports leagues are gonna have to really uh regulate this thing that's happening. Obviously, they're in bed with the gambling, and it's helping generate revenue, but it's
Hmm.
going to come at a cost, and it's going to affect the perception of a lot of these leagues because everybody's gambling now. So how do you know what's authentic versus what's being compromised?
Yeah, it's insane, and I want to make sure. I mean, you and I always are like integrity is the most important thing. So you gotta be careful what you see on social media, right? But I'm not. Am I mistaken that Adam Silver may have to speak to Congress?
Yes,
Correct.
they did say that he's going to have to go hit the floor and really speak to this. And I think everything that we're saying is alleged.
No,
Nobody has been convicted of these things.
no.
But I want to kind of mirror this to the steroid scandal in baseball.
Yeah,
Remember this for many years, the steroid era, let's say mid early to mid 90s going into the the early parts of the 2000s. It was a big boom in baseball, but it came at a cost,
yeah,
which really forced a lot of baseball to be held to the carpet
yeah.
because it ran so rampant. And I think for Congress at this point, especially when you have Jonte Porter, Michael Beasley was, pardon me, Malik Beasley was under investigation for gambling this off season, in which he was getting ready to get $40 million off of a good season with Detroit. He was getting ready to get another bag, and then the allegations came out and really changed his trajectory, and he still isn't on the team. And now you have a current coach and a player who was under investigation
Mhm.
last season. So this could reverberate for the future as well.
For sure. I I don't want to be that guy. I do, especially with the Chauncey Billups case, right? Like it is bigger than Chauncey, right? So I would love to have seen headlines speaking about like the mob families a little
Right.
more, right? Because
Four,
that's
four out of
bigger.
the five, four out of the five mafia families
Yeah.
are supposedly involved in
For
this.
sure, right? So I do think that deserves more airtime, right? I'm not sure that Chauncey should be the face of that scandal, right? Because again, if the mob is involved, then Chauncey is a player, right? And it's bigger than him, right? Because Chauncey isn't the ringleader. I'm not trying to let him off the hook, for anything that for any wrongdoing that he may have contributed to, right? But I just think that if you're talking to mob and Chauncey Billups, right? Like, yeah,
Right.
right.
It's definitely bigger
So,
than that.
so for that's just the part of the media that we forever have to contend with, right? What makes the headlines and why, all right? And that's to take accountability for what Chauncey is alleged to have done, all right? But it is just to keep in our mind that we're talking like historic crime families, right? Like this goes back 80 or so years, right? Like in Chauncey Billups, right? So let's just I do want to learn more about like their involvement and not just Chauncey Billups. But that goes but that kind of goes besides the point that we're discussing of the dark cloud that this has really brought over a really successful opening season, opening week for the NBA season, right? NBC is back, right? TNT is TNT's like premier NBA show is now on ESPN. I think there's young players are playing really well. Stars are playing stars. I think there's a lot to be excited about, especially for a league that folks have fans have kind of complained about in the last few years, right? About
Mhm.
like just things not being as they're probably not being as good as it once was, right? Now that's all opinion based, right? But I think there there's been a really great effort to put a really good product out there for fans this year, and some of that is not being lost. But you have to talk about a scandal side by side about what's a really successful opening week, and that's just unfortunate.
What I will say to that is when you see scandals like this hit, but your league is able to sustain, that shows that you have a good infrastructure.
For sure.
One of the things that I've always admired about the NFL is that they are constantly under scrutiny for something,
Hmm.
yet the shield is able to sustain.
Yeah.
When we speak to the steroid scandal for baseball, that really, dimmed a lot, but um, the talent was able to prevail.
Hmm.
Again, to your point, it's about the product, right? So when you see this happen, um, it's not a coincidence that this is happening while the NBA is at its best and most financially lucrative that they've ever been. Uh,
Definitely.
when we speak to where David Stern really built this league from and what he had to really clean up, he had a drug scandal in the late 70s and early 80s that really kind of aligned with what was happening in the world at that time. It was a big drug issue in terms of cocaine. So it kind of mirrored. Right now, especially with everything going on with prop bets and apps and FanDuel and all types of DraftKings and all types of stuff, it's regulated everywhere. So it's not a coincidence that it's kind of mirroring what's happening outside. So I
Yeah.
think that's what's happening. But I think to your point, for a league and really just all institutions in regards to sports, for them to be and survive a lot, these scandals are going to happen, but you got to be able to perform. And I think the product, to your point, has been spectacular, and we got to hope to continue to see that.
Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, I think you're not speaking about often is that our question is whatever money you're getting on the side worth it, right? You talk about this be just like you spoke to this being the most lucrative time we've seen in NBA history, right? Um Players just get money thrown at them, right?
Mhm.
I don't know, like, how much are you making from side bets that you risk something that's so lucrative not only for you but like your family, right?
Mhm.
This is wealth that's such a family up for a very, very long time, for generations, right? If you play it right, right? You play it right and you're smart with your money. Like, why risk that for something that doesn't seem that lucrative? Like, maybe we're just not aware of like how much they're getting on the side, right? But to me, it's just the the potential the potential reward doesn't outweigh the risk.
So I think those questions are relative to how we may live,
Hmm.
how we may think.
Okay,
I
that's
think
fair.
one of the issues that may present itself, and it's always revealed later on, maybe like 20 years from now when they do the documentaries and stuff like that. But I think what we've seen, especially when it comes to that, is it's a lifestyle thing and a mentality thing towards like competition and how they always are chasing a thrill, right? You're always chasing something that is very, very hard to in a civilian type of way, really, really encapsulate. So for players, in terms of how they are competing, that's one. But then two, even though players are making a lot of money, they also spend a lot of money. So uh the lifestyles that they live, sometimes they get put in positions to where they have to take risks to try to maintain and sustain a lifestyle that they are struggling with. One of the things that was revealed about Malik Beasley's situation, and I think a lot of that hasn't been ironed out all the way as well. So we got to be mindful of that. All of that is alleged too. But it was revealed that even though Malik Beasley is a 10-year veteran in the NBA, he's got multiple contracts, he was in a lot of debt. And he kind of was living check to check, even though he's making millions of dollars. So these are circumstances that we on the outside aren't fully aware of.
Mhm.
And then we wonder, why are these players risking so much to get a small gain? A lot of it is that they are put in positions to where they feel like they have to, or and they get the weight of it, they get so far behind it, it's hard for them to get out of it.
Yeah,
And
I'm just I know like you expect adults to be accountable for themselves, right? I'm
right,
just wondering. I think you spoke before about are there more that teams like? I wonder what's the financial advising infrastructure of teams, right?
right,
The
right.
teams are ran by executives who have a lot of money and who are able to keep a lot of wealth, right? Can does financial literacy have to be more, like more embedded in the onboarding of players, right? And regular, because I get it, that happens, but like when you're making so much wealth, and I guess sometimes it's difficult to go from not having a lot of money to having a lot of bread, and just like kind of like not being cognizant of what you have and what you're spending, right? Because that's the thing, generally speaking, right? I saw a CNBC like segment speaking about like how folks make more money, they then excuse reasons to spend more money, right? And I can assume being a millionaire that happens on a larger scale, but can there be more done to make sure that players are able to secure their financial future and not go out like this? Because this just seems odd to me, right?
So one of the things, that you spoke about is in terms of financial literacy and the amount of money you make. One of the things that I think that is not really emphasized is time, right? When people speak about lifetime money, generational money, people don't speak about how quick that money comes, and then what happens once that window closes,
Yeah,
right? So when we speak about a player like LeBron James,
yeah,
who's been in the NBA longer than he's been in the NBA longer in his lifetime than he wasn't in the NBA,
that's just insane.
right? That is an anomaly,
Yeah,
right? If you make the NBA, you're hopeful that your career can last 20 years,
yeah,
but there's a possibility that it might only last 4,
yeah.
right? The same can be said about any professional sports league
Mm-hmm.
or even entertainment. When you
Yeah,
speak about music and or film, anything like that, you don't know how long your career
no,
will last, right? So when this money is coming in, you spend it as if it's going to last forever,
yeah,
but it doesn't.
no,
Um, Recently, Allen Iverson, he released a book, Misunderstood, New York Times bestseller. I gotta put that plug in because AI is one of my favorite players ever. But he also released a complimentary documentary on
series got
on Prime,
me and Miles watched the first 2 episodes.
right.
Yeah.
But it was a segment in there when they were speaking about Q Gaskins, one of the executives in Reebok at the time. He was speaking about a conversation he had with Allen Iverson's family, and it was a big debate about whether you can spend $100 million. And one side of the family was saying yes, you could, and another side of the family was saying no, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying you don't know spending. You could spend $100 million in a day if you really try,
Yeah.
right? But it's just the idea of, oh, Frank Tier made $300 million off of this contract. Isaiah made $400 million off of this contract. They should be good for life. Yes, that's relative to how we're thinking at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The lifestyle in which these individuals live, they're not cognizant of, to your point, how long it's going to last because they're not thinking about time. Some of these players, they there's a lot of players in NBA history who are great in short pockets of time, a Gilbert Arenas, a Michael Redd. When we think about their peak or their prime, it's like they had a 3 or 4 year run where they were amongst the best.
Yeah.
And then the injury might happen.
Yeah. It's over.
And then it's over. Like it's really over. Like the checks aren't the same. Your career changes. So or the trajectory of it changes. So the money slows up differently, but you establish a lifestyle that needs $100 million contract.
Yeah.
but you only make 5. So now what are you gonna do to get that extra money?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of risk. So I think that's something that when these conversations are had with certain players, or all the players, honestly, or all the teams, you got to think about, okay, how long can this last?
Yeah.
This window, and when you have the window, what are you doing to diversify your money and sustain you after it closes? Yeah,
Yeah.
a deep conversation. I mean, that's not just for entertainers, but individuals personally in general. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Sure. Great conversation, man. Great conversation. We definitely gonna tap in throughout the season for more NBA and basketball coverage. Frank, we're gonna tap in for sure. I'm Isaiah. This is Legend 2 Games. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.